Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Chaska City Council meeting for Monday, June 30th. Can I have everyone rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Elise, can you please call a roll?
Councilmember Hatfield?
Here.
Councilmember Benish?
Here.
Councilmember Shevlin?
Here.
Councilmember McGraw?
Here.
Mayor Hubbard?
Here. All right, moving along. I have adopted the agenda on the agenda. So are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to adopt.
Motion. Second.
All right, motion by Councilmember Hatfield and second by Councilmember Shevlin. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, agenda is adopted. Next, we move along to visitor presentation. Is anybody in the audience here for something that's not on the agenda? I'm not really seeing anybody, so we will move right along. And then move down to approve previous meeting minutes from the June 16th meeting. Does anybody have any additions or corrections to this? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion as well.
Motion to adopt the minutes.
Okay, a motion by Councilmember Benish,
Second.
a second by Councilmember Grah. Any discussion? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, minutes are adopted. And then that moves us along to consent items. These items need little to no discussion unless somebody does want to pull it off and have a bigger discussion or has maybe a question on it. Does anybody have a question on a consent item? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve consent.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Hatfield and second by Councilmember Benish. Any discussion? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, consent items adopted. And then that moves us along to action items. 8A, adopt ordinance 2025-1062, regulating the keeping of chickens.
Mayor and Councilmember, this is an item that is coming back from a work session that we had, as well as considering it a couple times in the past. I'll turn it over to Elise, who has put together the provisions for this.
Mayor and council members, as Matt mentioned, this is coming back to you from the April 21st work session. So we took what we heard during that time and based upon the previously written ordinance that was not adopted in 2021 and worked off of that. So using that, we worked with our city attorney and made to incorporate those comments and suggestions. So just kind of key components, I'm not going to run through it all, so if you have questions, certainly let us know. But just generally, in the general provisions, here it is noted, and this came out of the work session as well as some public comments, that this ordinance will not override any covenants from an HOA or common interest community. So if a HOA or a common interest community does have provisions in place that do not allow for chickens, this ordinance will not override that. Requirements for keeping chickens, this subsection talks about there will be no more than 5 non-crowing hens or roosters. As we come to learn, there are such things as crowing hens. And so we added that in there, but also it does include roosters as well, which this group talked about. That they must be kept in the proper spaces, a coop around an exercise yard. The ordinance does talk about what those entail, as well as the placement of those, and other regulations regarding chicken food and waste. It also prohibits the sale of eggs and chicken as well. Again, the chicken runs in coops. There's allowed to be 1 coop run in an exercise yard on the property in the rear yard and must meet certain setbacks. And those setbacks are the same as our accessory structure setbacks that we have throughout our ordinance, screening and size requirements. Permits and fees, from what we heard from you during the work session, they must, residents who are seeking to have chickens must apply for a permit. It will be we are proposing a $100 fee associated with it. It would be a one-time fee, not an annual fee. And before a permit is issued, we would review the zoning and other code compliance will be reviewed as part of that permit application before an actual permit is issued. And then, again, before a permit is issued, inspections will be carried out to verify that that coop is in the correct location and the way it's been installed. And then finally, violations. If a violation of the ordinance is found, they have up to 10 days to fix that, and failure to correct that will result in revocation of the permit. So again, very high-level overview of what the ordinance entails. Happy to delve into specific sections if you have it. But staff is recommending that you approve ordinance 2025-1062. If you do approve it, staff will finalize the administrative process for implementation. We have generally talked about what that process would look like. We need to finish those details and a permit application. So it'd be a little bit of a time before permits would be ready if the council chooses to move forward. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Does anybody have any questions for Elise?
I assume that there's a delay in time from passage, potential passage, to allow associations to take action as well. Because obviously I suspect that there's no association that currently has it says you can't, because why would you say you can't when the city overrides it right now, right? So I was just curious, because you'd hate to see a situation where the excitement goes and they go out and do it, and then the association where they're in says, hey, no, you can't. So again, just confirming that there's some timeline of knowledge there, and that works.
Yeah,
Okay.
it does, Councilmember Gra, it does take some time to, before the ordinance will become effective, we do need to publish it and wait so many days. That gives us the time to work on the application and inform the HOAs and whatnot of what will be happening.
Yeah.
What are the setback rules for accessory buildings currently and that would apply in this regard?
They are 10 feet.
10 feet from property lines
From
or
property
buildings?
lines.
Okay.
Yeah, one thing,
Like sides too?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
yeah, so it's from, basically sides and backyard have to be 10 foot off. When we had first looked at this, we had discussed like a 50-foot potential one. One of the challenges that we found when we went around and looked at the lots within the community, most lots would not be able to meet
Yep.
50 foot. So, then in essence, you're passing an ordinance that says you can do something, but somebody practically can't do it.
That makes sense. And then, I think this violations one covers it, but we had talked about if someone like has known issues on their property, hoarders or people who, don't care for their property well, they would not be given or you would give them one after they clean up whatever, or what does that exactly say?
Yeah, Councilmember Chevlin, that is what that provision
Okay.
discusses, is allows us to look at, are there any other kind of nuisance issues on the property that may exist that we would want to see cleaned up first before this is allowed?
And then, are there any, I don't know a lot about chickens. Are there any issues with contamination to groundwater or, like creeks and rivers and runoff from chickens? Is there any health?
Yeah, none that I have heard of. There's quite a few suburban communities, and even like Minneapolis and St. Paul, that allow for chickens there. One of the things I think is key is in our ordinance, speaks to it, is that, these chickens have to be kept in humane conditions.
Yeah.
And so that they have to be, if a coop wasn't being maintained and had a lot of feces or things like that, that would be a reason we'd have to be able to go and say, you have to fix this or else you're gonna have it revoked.
There's also a provision in here where it says no part of a coop, run, or exercise yard shall be located within 15 feet of any lake, pond, river, creek, stream, or wetland. So,
I think to maybe speak to if a chicken is loose or something that we'd have to impound the chickens, maybe
That's in there as well,
talking about
yeah.
that.
Yeah, that, Mayor Hubbard, that is included in there, that within so many days, if we do have a chicken, we will come get it, and we will work with a group that will then keep that chicken, but you have only a certain number of days to come claim that chicken.
It's very similar to other pets, that if we impound them, that they have a certain number of days for the owner to be able to claim them before they do what they do.
Sad.
Yes.
If you ever find a little Yorkie running away, she got out. She didn't let out. She runs all the time.
Does anybody else have any questions for Elise at all? Otherwise, part of this opportunity is engaging with the public and giving the public an opportunity to ask any questions or make comments. Looking at myself on the camera, I see a really wild hair. It's a problem with curls. And so if anybody here in the chamber has anything they'd like to say, I'd lend an opportunity for you to come up and approach, and you just have to state your name and address for a public record. And then if there are individuals that are on virtually that would like to comment, you do have an opportunity. You can put your comment in the chat, and our moderator will read that message, and so you would have an opportunity. You can't kind of unmute just with some of our protocols, but you'll also have an opportunity. So taking that away, go ahead and introduce yourself and state your name, record, or address for the record.
My name is John Bronzinski. I reside at 1160 Symphony Lane, Chaska. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. Mayor Hubbard, Councilman Benesh, I believe you're my representative, and other members of the council. Some of you maybe recognize me because I attended your 21st work session, and I've been following this issue since the draft of 2020. And my concern is over process and what's really in the best interest of neighbors, and not creating an issue where one doesn't currently exist. In my past history, I've had a lot of experience being in front of the council in terms of getting construction programs and designs and constructions approved with both the Planning Commission in this city as well as other cities and the council. So I'm familiar with your processes, and I respect those. I took a look at the draft from 2020 and compared it to the current 2025-1062 and noted some things that had been changed or removed, some good, some not so good in my opinion. One of the concerns I have is in attending the work session, there was absolutely no conversation among the council members relative to the 50-foot setback, yet that was removed from the current 2025-1062. And city administrator just explained the logic behind that, and in a way that makes my argument. 50 feet is not a long way from a residential structure, but yet many of the lots, the majority of the lots in the city have 10-foot setback on one side, 10 foot on the other side. So literally from this panel to that panel, if you straightened it out, that would be 20 feet, 10 feet on each side. And you can imagine on a hot, humid day opening up your window, whether you're taking good care of the coop or not, there's going to be some disturbance and a static impact of having a chicken coop and a run that close. Imagine people who have a neighboring dog that comes out and barking at the chickens and that kind of thing. So I've made many of these points before, but I am really disappointed that no consideration beyond the 10-foot setback that's already part of the ordinance for a, for a shed. A shed is not the same as a chicken coop. And I think you'd be hard pressed to drive around to farms and find farmers who place a chicken coop under their window 20 feet away. I don't think you'd see that. So my biggest concern is this situation of setback. Maybe 50 foot is too aggressive, but certainly 10 feet from the property line when it's 10 feet the other way is not a good move for a residential community that is so densely populated as Chaska. And we're trying to move houses closer together to make them more dense. A lot of the lots aren't even a third of an acre. The one positive thing that was added was the condition regarding the situation with covenants and so forth. And I just want to make sure I understand if a person has a home that was built under a building covenant that runs with the land, this may be a question for the city attorney, which takes precedent, the ordinance allowing chickens or the covenant that doesn't allow for chickens?
So members of the council, I believe the question posed is whether the ordinance, how the ordinance addresses the interaction between private covenants and the allowance of chickens in the ordinance. The ordinance specifically states that the private covenants will override or will govern, notwithstanding anything in the ordinance. Those private covenants are not affected by this ordinance.
Mr. Attorney, if in the covenant there's a clause in a homeowner's covenant that says that a city ordinance would take precedent over the covenant, you've got a two-way situation. How would you see that in that circumstance?
Sir, are you asking for yourself or are you asking for the city? It sounds like you're asking me for legal advice. I represent the city of Chaska. If the council wants to ask the same question of me, I'm just not sure where the motivation for this is coming from.
I mean, I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the question the question you're asking is, if you have a covenant that says that city ordinances are going to override, if you have that and you have our ordinance that says that we're not going to have this ordinance override, I mean, from the city's perspective, we'd look at it and say, we're not going to touch something that's interfering with the covenant of on a household. Your question might be more, if you took it to court, what would happen?
You're asking
think-
which supersedes.
Yeah, and I think
Well,
Elise sort
the
of
question is, in that
addressed
scenario,
both.
what would supersede?
Yeah, exactly. So in that
So even if
scenario-
you have an association and the association says chickens are not allowed, however, if the city passes, in another section, it says any ordinance approved by the city would take precedent over homeowners association rules and regulations.
Well, I think this ordinance is specifically saying that it's not going to override a covenant.
Okay.
And I guess my answer would be is, in your covenants, if it says a city ordinance, it would override your covenant, we'd say, okay, but then we go back to our ordinance would say, well, we're not going to override your covenant.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah.
So, council, I think in this situation, that would be a question for the homeowner and their association to figure out exactly how those
Yeah.
would apply. That essentially would be a private matter between the homeowners association and the homeowner. The city's ordinance would not prohibit the keeping of chickens in there. The city's ordinance allows the keeping of chickens within the city of Chaska. So but it specifically states that it's not going to interfere with the application of those private covenants. So whether it does or doesn't, that would be a matter for those the association and the homeowners to figure out themselves, and if there was ambiguity, they could amend their documents to clarify, or they could hold a meeting to determine what the applicability would be.
Well, because it is possible that a private, it's possible, because I've seen it happen in many different situations in associations I've been a part of. It is possible for a private covenant to be in place that the association just doesn't enforce. So, you know, people will have the right under our ordinance to be able to apply for a license, and as long as they meet our requirements, you know, we would issue a license to them. But then if an association then came along and said, okay, you got the license, but we're not gonna allow it. But an association also could decide not to do that. They could decide, you know, we're not gonna get involved in that. We're just gonna allow them to move forward. We just don't, as a city, have any ability to control that.
Don't govern the private.
Yeah. So what happens with the association is really going to be dependent on what the association decides to do. So Jonathan Association might go in and say, you know, sort of to your point, if they haven't had to address this issue before, they probably haven't talked about it. But if we go and we tell them, hey, you know, we've adopted this ordinance, they may then say, you know what, we're going to sit down, we're going to talk about this, and we're going to make a decision so that everybody in the Jonathan Association knows. So, you know, so that's where, to your point, the notification of the associations that they have the ability to be able to decide what they want to do.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna speak to, is I think at least someone answered your question in regards to that gap of time between if it passes
Yeah.
and
I wouldn't
implementation.
anticipate the city wanting to get in the middle of it, I understand that.
Yeah.
However, your language is important in terms of creating the opportunity, should a person in a covenant or a homeowners association, to make an issue of it if it becomes a nuisance. So anyways, in summary, my biggest concern today, after all my involvement, is that I think the setback is far too limited and unreasonable. And I think if people in the community really knew what was happening, we don't have a local paper anymore, and it'll be too late by the time they figure it out. There'll be concerns. And I don't want to see neighbors pitted against neighbor either over something in the community that you totally have the control of approving or not approving. That doesn't exist today. And my sense is that there's just overall drive to be like all the other neighboring communities rather than to be leaders and do what's right for the city of Chaska. So the only other comment I have is that there's nothing in here should you approve this and people go on a 1 week's vacation, what to do with that. Clearly.
It actually does address it in there.
Does it?
Yeah,
Okay.
it talks about, basically, it allows the person who's going to be the caretaker of that to be able
Responsible.
to be responsible for
Okay.
it. Yep.
Okay.
And they would have the same responsibilities when they're gone that they'd have when they're there.
Sure,
So.
sure. And then lastly, at the work session, the council realized that most of Chaska is in a homeowners association, so it made sense to put that language in. But just as much as saying a 50-foot setback makes it difficult for anybody in Chaska to have it, associations can put this language in and make it impossible too. So I don't think that's a very good argument to take the 50-foot setback. It may be that it should be 40 foot or 35, but 10 feet on both sides of the line, pretty close. Each of these panels are 2 feet, 10 feet, straighten that out. Got your window open on a hot, humid summer day, and it's pretty unpleasant.
Would actually be 20 feet though, because yours.
Yeah, this is 20 feet
Okay.
though.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
If you straighten it out from there to there, assuming those panels are 2 feet each, that's your 20 feet. 10 feet on each side from center to end. Thank you.
Appreciate your comments.
Thank you, John.
Does anybody on Zoom, Krista, is there any additional commentary? No one is on Zoom. Okay. Anybody want to speak? Any council members want to speak about this at all? Have a comment or?
I guess my thoughts are the same as they were several years ago when we last looked at this. And having lived next to backyard chickens where I didn't smell them or hear them, on a small lot where I open my windows a lot, I guess my lived experience is that it's, you know, it doesn't end up as being as much of an issue. And I do have a dog that would absolutely bark at them and didn't seem mind. He's a little murderer. He kills squirrels even. So if you, it's not that he's a chill dog. He is a hound. So he's very prey driven. But yeah, and I just, in speaking to people that live in communities where there's backyard chickens and have them next to them, it seems to be a chill thing that is not impactful. When I looked for any documentation that it impacts home values, there is none. In fact, it talks about how sometimes it's a positive thing that people want to live in communities like this. So I guess that's my thoughts, is I haven't really changed in the last few years in my stance, I guess.
All right, appreciate that. Anybody else want to? I think for every person that took time to, and I want to stop and I guess say I appreciate everyone taking the time to reach out to us, either a phone call or an email, or email to city staff that was passed along. I know there's a dedicated Facebook group to backyard chickens. I also know that there's been, over the years, a lot of commentary on backyard chickens. So, but I feel like for almost, well, I would say for almost every person that is not really in the pro-chicken camp, there are maybe 1 to 2 people that are. And I think, especially in the last year, and this isn't a driving factor for me for decision-making, because I have other thoughts on this, is that a lot of people look at it and say, egg prices are extremely high. I want to find a sustainable way of having affordable eggs. Personally, this is not an affordable way of having eggs. I just want to put that out there, that the, general costs, I mean, I know a lot of people commentary that were pro-chicken were not happy about the $100 fee, but our staff time accounts for something, it counts for money. And my biggest driving point of allowing this is to make sure that the maintenance of the animals are well cared for, and that goes towards that. And I also want to make sure that neighbors are interacting with each other well. But I also think that we shouldn't have, let's say, 20% of our city affected by a decision because, the other 80% happens to be in an HOA or have a neighborhood covenant. That I think we need to allow for the opportunity for those other discussions to be had if those HOAs want to take up that and have that discussion, then it's something that should be available to them. But with the cost, I was looking at kind of the cost as far as the chicken goes. Sorry, I'm kind of bouncing around everywhere. It was, on the low end, maybe $300, upwards to over $2,000 to have a coop built. And then the yearly maintenance was anywhere from $500 to $1,500, depending on the kind of feed and bedding and all that sort of stuff. So this isn't something that I think, 5 chickens is going to be, a way to really offset your grocery bill. This is a lifestyle choice. This is, that decision of having that and knowing that. I did talk to Sheriff Cameron this morning because I wanted to kind of see, was there, our neighboring communities, was there any sort of issues? And there was none that he anecdotally could think of with that. And so I think sometimes when there's something that's somewhat unknown, it can be a little bit fearful of this is going to really affect my quality of life. I, in my profession, have been around a lot of chicken coops, and I will say until you get really right up close to those, you really can't smell them, but that's just my own personal opinions on it. And I think that, you know, opening up that avenue for folks that want to do this, that meet the criteria to do it, and that the animals are well cared for, I don't really see an issue with that.
I've got one, and I don't know if, Matt, this is asking too much of the city, so maybe that is a reason no. But if you have any other kind of pets, you know, you have to take your dog in for rabies shots every year, and you have to maintain that animal is a safe animal to be around. So while I think maybe 100 might be a little much, but at the same time, why is that not an annual fee to make sure? Because somebody could pay it, put a chicken coop up, and then I will put myself in this category. We've gotten pets, and all of a sudden, I'm like, I really don't want this pet anymore, and it's a hassle, and I don't give it what it should. So if somebody got into that with chickens, and then a year later, their chickens were, you know, not being cared for as well, or they were smelling bad, or whatever else, this is a way the city can make sure that then that owner is held responsible, because.
Yeah, I will say that regardless of the cost, or regardless of the revenue that comes in, as a city.
It's more of a cost.
Well, I think, you know, regardless of how much revenue we take in, we're taking on a responsibility as a city that if we're putting in place an ordinance, we need to enforce it regardless of what revenue we bring in. I personally think, you know, if we get into, you know, for the people who, for the people who are perfect owners and we never see issues with them, $100 is plenty. For people who are an issue, $100 isn't nearly enough.
Yeah, but I'm
And
saying
so-
every year, could we make an inspection required so that you have to pay $100?
We can. I think the feedback that we've received is that people feel that that's a really steep price to pay, but we absolutely can. I mean,
We could
yeah.
explore a renewal fee,
Yeah, that's what I'm
right?
thinking. I
Like,
mean,
maybe it's
Yeah.
$100 as a, you know,
50
but
every other
then,
year.
yeah, 50 or something.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly can set that.
It's a way for us
yeah.
to contain, and I don't think a million people are gonna run out and get chickens. But for those that do, it's a way to ensure that they're, you know, living by the rules, and we're still taking pride in our city. And like I said, it's no different than taking your dog in for annual vaccines. It's expensive, but that's
Yep.
part of what you got into when you got a dog. So,
Yep.
just trying to think of how, and there was another part in there when we talked about it last time, Elise, where if a neighbor had an issue, they could, you know, potentially say something. Do we still have that clause in there where?
Well, I think if they're in violation of it, that is something that they should report.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
that's-
no, but what you're talking about is we had something in the ordinance before that said that your neighbors had to sign off on
Oh,
you
we
getting it
talked
reported.
about it.
We
but-
talked about it, but at the time, the decision was, boy, that's a real good way
Yeah.
to pit neighbors against neighbors, is to do that. So we had taken that part out and really just said, if somebody is violating the ordinance,
Yeah.
that they should report it and that we'll go out.
But so in
and
this case, if his neighbor put chickens up and he was constantly smelling, that would mean they're not keeping their chickens. He could call and we would have to
Yes.
go out and say, you know, that's,
Yep.
okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
Is there an opportunity to make a couple more comments?
Absolutely. Come on forward, John.
I appreciate your discussion. However, there wasn't any discussion about the setback. I do believe, Councilmember Hatfield, I don't have data to put in front of you about home values, but I do know that as people are walking the perimeter and looking out the windows, if they see a chicken coop 20 feet away from their window, it may not matter to some, but it could make a difference on a sale, clearly, no question about that. And in terms of lifestyle, yeah, if people want the lifestyle of a farm, they could buy 2-3 acres of land in an area and have as many chickens, cows, horses, whatever they want. But less than 1/3 of an acre lot with residential homes so close together and domestic animals mixed in and all of the other situations, I think is a real issue. And and not getting your neighbor's approval, I understand that, but because this kind of flies under the radar, an ordinance like this, with very little known to the residents, first time a homeowner might know about the ordinance is when a chicken coop is being built next door and they call the city and there's nothing we can do about it. It's over. And now you got conflict. And you've probably all seen on the news that goofy basketball hoop story where there was lawsuits and stuff over a basketball hoop, you know, the kids playing. This is a different situation altogether. So I really, really encourage you to think again about the setback issue.
Appreciate added thoughts. I think I understand the property value argument. I think, like I kind of touched on it earlier, for every person that doesn't like the idea of having backyard chickens, there were like 2 people that do. And so I think sometimes it's just all in the mindset of the person of whether or not it's acceptable or not. I've had, and this dates back to when we first talked about this back in 2020, numerous conversations with backyard chicken owners and their neighbors and said, has there been issues? I didn't have a single neighbor that said it smelled, it was bad. They really enjoyed seeing the chickens and they liked having free eggs. So that doesn't mean that that speaks for every single scenario or every single person, but that has kind of been my anecdotal evidence, at least per.
Your association?
So, no, I live in a townhome.
Okay.
So that just would not be something that would be plausible for me. And I think as I sit up here as a decision maker, I can look at my lived experience and say, I draw on that, but I also have the mindset of what is best for the community of Chaska? What is the community at whole going to benefit from? And we've had a lot of community members express the desire for this, and I feel that if we have a proper ordinance that addresses the health and well-being of not only the animals, but of the setback with, you know, with the size of the coops and the cost and maintenance and to make sure that the food is being maintained and make sure that the chickens are being protected, you know, from outside predators. I think all those rules and regulations kind of abide by making sure that the quality of life everybody involved is important. And so when I look at that and I do the due diligence, I don't want neighbors fighting neighbors. That's not something that is ideal for me, but somebody could put in a fence next door and that could upset their neighbor because maybe they want an open backyard. There's a lot of things that somebody can do on their property that the neighbor might feel like, I wouldn't landscape my property like that. I wouldn't put that basketball court at the back end of my property, but those are all allowable things. I would put the swimming pool in, you know? So I think I understand the fear, but I don't think that there are going to be hordes of people running to get a chicken permit either.
Yeah, those are kind of my thoughts too, is that a lot of the people we hear from wanting us to vote against this, it almost is a feeling like the city's going to be overrun with chickens if we allow it to happen. And given the startup costs and the maintenance costs and the upkeep costs, I don't really see that happening. I'm also not one to tell people how they should live their life or their lifestyle. And if people want to make this lifestyle choice, that's up to them if it's allowed by city law. I do like the idea of amending the ordinance to increase the setbacks. I understand that 50 is probably too much, but would a 20 or 25 foot setback be a considerable, you know, compromise? I also have friends who have backyard chickens, multiple friends who have backyard chickens, and as recently as Saturday, I was at some of their houses, and it was hot, and it was humid. I didn't smell a thing, and I didn't hear a thing. So there is that. And that's my personal experience with them as well. I don't see the city being overrun by chickens here, and I don't think it as a nuisance of sorts. I feel like chickens can be more looked at as a domesticated animal that you get the benefit of eggs. And again, the startup costs and upkeep are not worth it if you don't want to buy your eggs at the grocery store. You could opt to get them from a farmer locally too, or a neighbor in a neighboring city as well. But I don't see many people in a lot of areas of the city, especially with how many homeowners associations there are. I don't see us having a chicken problem per se if this were to pass.
I will say, just for the councils, so in Eden Prairie, coops are allowed. They have to be 10 feet from the property line, but also 50 feet from any neighboring home. So that 50 feet overrides the 10-foot setback, or it's both, 10 foot and 50 feet. And then Chanhassen is 10 feet and 25 feet from any adjacent residential, including neighbor structure. So they've gone with their 10-foot setbacks, but they've added that language of, in Eden Prairie, 50 feet from any residential house, and in Chan, 25. So I don't know if that,
Getting to a setback issue, the smallest width lot we have is 30 foot. So we have some 30-foot lots that are up in the Clover Ridge neighborhood, and we probably have some 30-foot lots in downtown, although most of them are probably in that 42 to 45-foot width. So, on the 30-foot ones, if you, in those cases, those homes are right up to the 10-foot off the line. So, if you came in 20 foot, then you'd be too close to the one side. I mean, that's sort of where we came up with the 10 foot. You can certainly make it, whatever setback we want to, but that just gives you sort of a sense of, some of the lots in downtown and some of the, lots like in Clover Ridge are 30 foot. At least gives you a sense of sort of what you have to work with
but
the
if they're
backyard.
30 foot, but the ordinance is saying 10 feet from the setback, but 25 from a dwelling, or 50, depending on which city we're talking about. So in length, are they longer? Like, do they have 60-foot length where you'd still be from the corner?
Yeah,
of
the
house
problem
to
would be though is that they're the 30-foot width in the house here. So if they move it 20 foot away from the house here, now they're gonna be closer than 20 foot to the house over here.
But what if they went back, like into their backyard?
They'd still be
No, they would still be.
yeah, I mean, because the length of the.
I gotcha.
Because in those lots, they have backyard,
squared.
they have detached garages.
Ah.
And so a lot of the depth of their lot is actually taken up by a garage.
Okay.
So they really have just that central part of their lot to be able
I
to
gotcha.
work with.
But wouldn't it still fit in with the parameters of language that talked about, like, within 25 feet of a structure? Because you're talking about the home's not gonna be right on.
So the homes
10
are,
feet from
the
either, so
homes
you
can
got
be
20
5
right
foot
there.
off. In that, like a Clover Ridge neighborhood, they have to be 10 foot on one side and 5 foot on the other.
Okay,
And then they're 30 foot wide in total,
okay.
so.
But isn't that similar to the townhome then? I mean, doesn't that make your argument that homes are too tight for chicken coop?
Yeah, I mean, that's the question.
Or do you really envision a lot of those homeowners really wanting to partake in this sort of hobby?
They may.
I would say
Well,
no.
and Matt,
I would say
what
no.
area of
Clover
Clover Ridge are we discussing?
Most
So
of
we're talking
Clover
about
Ridge.
the detached, single-family homes that are sort of in the heart of the community. So if
Like
you remember where I used to live?
Yeah, Mark Twain area.
Mark Twain Drive,
But that's all
Faulkner.
underneath the
Yeah,
Jonathan's
so most of
HOA
those wouldn't be able
anyways.
to.
And it's under the Cloverfield Association too. So they may not, but I mean, they may. I mean,
Yeah,
I only throw it out there, not
No,
saying
no,
that we
I-
shouldn't
I
do.
understand.
But just to give some context to, that we do have some smaller lots.
sure.
I do think in general, if you had the 10-foot setback, but said there was 20 foot from structure,
You would get that just because each house is 10 feet from their property
Well,
line.
no,
That's
he's
20.
saying over in Clover Ridge that could be.
yeah, I think those would be difficult.
Okay.
I think in any case. But let's say it's the downtown lots, let's say they're 42 foot wide, and the house is, 10 foot off of that, and then 20, I would say probably most homes you could get by with having a 10-foot setback, but saying it had to be 20 foot from a home.
Okay.
Don't you think? I mean, there's gonna be some that is gonna, there will be some homes like in that Clover Ridge neighborhood where that will make it difficult to do that.
Yeah, but, I mean, maybe that language, the added might
I mean, it's more
like,
competitive
keep
with
it
our,
more
yeah.
in the middle.
Yep.
If that's something that they want to do, so.
Yep.
So then if that's the case, we just amend,
Well, we don't have to amend anything.
we don't,
just-
because we haven't approved
You
anything,
haven't approved
right?
anything.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
And again, it doesn't have to be 20, it could be 25, or it could be whatever number you
Yeah.
want it to be.
No, but,
So would it have to be tabled until the language is changed?
No, we can, you guys can
No,
just
yeah.
approve it and direct us to make those changes. Because there's two things I've heard so far you guys talking about. One is a setback. And then the second one is, do you think we should have a renewal fee to be able to go out and basically re-inspect those each
Make
year?
sure that they're being kept humanely and.
Yeah, because I think if we were gonna have a renewal, because the way that we were approaching it initially is to say there's $100 fee, we go out, make sure that they're all set up okay, and then we would only go back out and inspect if there
Yeah,
was
if
a
there's an issue.
problem. If we did a renewal fee, I think we'd have to say part of that service that they're getting is us going out and doing a re-inspection of it.
right, and well, we discussed it earlier today when we talked about this. I think immediately, these coops are gonna be really nice, but I think, 3 years down the road, it really is gonna depend on that homeowner's ambition towards doing this, and we wanna make sure that, like, again, this is a lifestyle choice, wanna make sure that, I think that's a, fair assessment.
Make one final comment?
Absolutely, but you gotta come up to the mic, only because people outside on like,
Sure, absolutely.
YouTube can't hear you.
I just want to clarify what Matt's saying. Earlier, I said if a house has a 10-foot setback on one side and then a 10-foot, that's your 20 feet. Matt's saying if you have a 5-foot and a 10-foot setback, that's 15. If you say 20 feet from a structure, it's just adding 5 feet. It's not much. I think, 25 to 30 feet, similar to Chanhassen and Eden Prairie. I mean, they did that for a reason. It makes sense. And for Chaska to go the extreme the other way, I just don't think it's reasonable. If you have a lot that can accommodate it, great. If you don't, you may want to sell your house. If you want that kind of lifestyle, get a bigger lot. But to encroach on someone else's property, I
But they're
just don't.
not encroaching on property.
Well,
It
that's.
kind
probably-
of all
and-
comes down to like,
And again, I'm not afraid of chickens.
Right.
I'm principle-centered on what you're doing with the ordinance, having been in front of the council many times on landscape issues and so
Sure.
forth, and how absolutely strict and tough you are on retaining walls and on other structures and plant materials and screening for lighting.
Yeah.
And here you're going to stick a chicken coop within 10 feet of somebody's residence. It makes no sense to me. If the lot's big enough, great. If not, it shouldn't happen. But that's my final
I
comment.
appreciate it. I guess my thought is that the setbacks are there to just make sure, it's not butting up against someone's property. And the reason why I was, like, we can add more feet is if there is a concern of smell. I mean, 5 feet makes a difference, but you're gonna look out into your neighbor's yard, and if they have a coop, you're gonna see the coop. That's just what it is.
Yeah, I think the distinction, and I would want this distinction made, because I've been just doing some Google distancing just now downtown, would be, I think this is especially important downtown, but even in let's say Clover Ridge allowed it, distinguishing from the residents, because several lots, especially downtown, a lot of detached garages and things, that would cause a lot of issues.
From the principal residence.
Right, like the principal residence, that it's clear.
Sure.
That would be the only way I would support a setback add to this, is that
would
it's
agree
not
with
any building, it's the
Yeah,
residents
the residents.
specifically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
but generally, like, when I'm zooming around downtown measuring random distances on people's lots, it seems like 20 would be acceptable.
Okay.
If you want to be consistent with neighbor and make Chanhassen has 25.
Yeah.
You know, they go 10 with a 25
I think
foot.
25 gets crazy. I think we could just stay at 20 and it's a nice number.
And, I mean, Chanhassen, we have a historic downtown. Their
Yep.
lots are a little bit different down there than Chanhassen.
Yeah, Chanhassen's lots are, they have some smaller lots, but most of them
Yeah,
are
but most
quite,
of them
more of them
are-
are 80-foot
Yeah.
lots, yeah.
You know, I think about the older part of Chanhassen has more of that Rambler style
Yeah, down by the
lot.
post office and
Yeah,
stuff, yeah.
but, yeah.
But they're similar to ours. I mean, we have a lot of newer communities that have big lots and then a lot of, and I think Eden Prairie too, the older 70s Eden Prairie is very close together, but then you've got the sprawling Bear Path with 5,000 square foot lots.
I'm sure Bear Path doesn't allow chickens.
And it would,
I don't know if Bear Path does. or
They
not.
might, you never know.
and it would be from a neighboring residence. So somebody could put it on the back of their house, let's say. It wouldn't need to be 20 feet from their house, their own home.
Oh, we'd have to-
No,
yeah.
no,
Just
just
from
their
neighboring.
neighboring
Okay, I
property.
just want to
Yep.
be clear.
Right.
Because then, yeah, even some of the tightest lots I know of downtown, I think would still be okay with 20. 25, and not the lot I'm looking at right now, but most lots seem like they'd be okay.
That's no more than it currently states now, though, really, because it's, if you say it's 20 from a structure today, if you have two 10-foot setbacks on either side of the line, you're not adding.
I'd be in support of 20, but no more than that, so that's where.
I can comment now. I've been quiet. So I'll comment.
Welcome to the conversation,
Welcome to the conversation.
Councilmember
Enter the
Brock.
room. You know, I appreciate the thought in the conversation and appreciate, truthfully, it's interesting because a popular question I will get asked when people found out I've been on the council for 6 years is like, oh, what's like the most controversial thing you've talked about? It's like, you know, we had COVID, we had lots of stuff going on in the city, and it's been chickens, which is what it is. And so, you know, I will, some of you may not agree with this, but that's fair. Even the last time, I encouraged that conversation to come back to the council when I was on the council last time, because I wasn't educated about chickens, wanted to hear about it. I wasn't on the council the first time it came up. And I am very appreciative of people getting involved. I appreciate you showing up here tonight, because it's much easier and much harder and when you don't really have a sense. And you talk to people and you hear different opinions and whatnot. So I will say that I don't know what the vote will be, but I'm reading some tea leaves here. And I will tell you that my position has not changed in this. And I largely say that because I recognize in this situation, there are a fair amount of community members who are silent or don't know or haven't been involved. And I don't want to hold that against them. I have no issue with it being passed. I like the conversation of the setback changes, and that shows that collaborative. But just, you know, I will keep my opinion as previous, as a kind of a representation of that voice. Because I don't think it's a unanimous in the city. I think that there are strong opinions. I do think, you know, we do try our best to communicate effectively. We all know, I do think the point is someone's gonna build in, like, what's going on, what's in the backyard? That happens with a lot of things. So for that reason, I don't necessarily know where it'll land, but you know, kind of listening to the conversation, I do think it's important to make sure those people were heard as well. And I know all of you have heard that voice too. I'm not saying that. But again, I want to make sure people realize that I've learned a lot more than I ever thought about chickens. That's awesome. I'm very appreciative of people being involved in the emails and the letters and the work sessions and the information, because that is what government should be, that involvement. But with government, making sure that we're kind of speaking all the voices, that's kind of where I sit. Because I don't think it is a unanimous, and I don't know how it'll go, but I will make sure that it's not going to be unanimous if it goes that way, just because I think it is a controversial topic, weirdly enough, chickens. If it passes, I'll be in support of it. I will not scorn anyone in the community. I think it's, like I said, I think we've done a really strong due diligence and people have been involved. But I just want to make sure that all voices are elevated and heard. So that's what I'd like to say about that.
All right, appreciate your thoughts. Yes, this was back in 2021,
Oh,
early 2021?
I remember it first in 2015.
Okay.
This is the third time
This
I've.
is a strong, yeah, it's a very
Yeah.
strong topic.
Yeah.
And lots of opinions, lots of assessment to be had over it, you know, and making sure that, if this does happen, that it's done well and right, and with respect to neighbors and HOAs, covenants, and the chickens themselves. So, any other discussion?
Well, to me, I think if you are gonna take action on it tonight, I do think we need just to make it clear setbacks and where it's gonna be, and then renewal fees. Making sure that we get clear direction on that.
Okay, so with that being said, should we talk about the renewal fee piece
Yeah, I
of
think
it?
the
Because that's
renewal is
not-
hard, because the renewal fee, I get, and I don't think it would need to be a lot. I guess the expectation would be, with the renewal fee, would the coop be re-inspected?
Yeah, I think personally, I think that we should not be charging unless we're providing a
we're-
service. And to me, the service we're providing, which is really to the neighbors and to the homeowner, is to go out to re-inspect it to make sure that it's still fitting within our ordinance. I don't think we should be charging a fee if we're not providing a service.
Do you feel that fee should be tiered down from the application? Like, would
I mean, in my,
50 or 25 or somewhere in between be an appropriate price?
in my
to put
gut,
on
it should be no more than 50.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking, if we're sending someone out, like, that's staff time, I feel like it'd need to be more like 50, to re-inspect.
So
Yeah.
if I may, counsel,
Yes,
the appropriate measure of the fee is to offset the city's costs in enforcing and enforcing the entire ordinance scheme. So, I mean, it would be, yes.
Then it should be 500.
Yeah, right. In part for all of the operations that go towards making this licensing scheme work. But in general, a good rule of thumb is the city's costs for actually going out and making the inspection, processing the application. There should be no revenue generated from this, but
Right.
it should be a fee that's to offset the city's costs in regulating.
Sure.
But you just said we make money off building permits, so what's the difference?
Well, we use it to pay for our inspectors.
But that's what we should be doing with this, paying for the city's time to
Right,
inspect the
yeah.
coop.
Yeah, we're not gonna have the same employees going out and doing that inspection, so there's a different level of pay that they get. I personally think, I think $100 is an appropriate initiation
Yes,
sort of
I
fee.
agree.
To me, really, it could be anywhere between $25 and $50, and I think it would be fine for a renewal. Because, we're gonna send one person out, they're gonna, probably spend about a half hour or whatever it takes to go out there. I think between $25 and $50 is fine.
So I don't have a dog. You have to get your dog kind of registered, right? You have to pay a fee for that. Is that,
Theoretically, if I did that for no, I'm just kidding.
no, well, no, but like, is that,
Yeah, so for dogs, you have 2-year licenses.
okay.
So I can't remember the exact cost, but I think it's like,
$18 or something.
yeah, it's super
Okay.
cheap.
To me, there's a dog park that you get, and if your dog goes missing, they bring it back to you because it's licensed and they know where it belongs.
Yeah,
Sure.
So I think that's just a different service.
Yeah,
it's a
no, I'm
different-
trying to
Not
kind of,
inspecting, but
I'm
I
trying
know,
to
I thought about the
gauge
same
like
thing.
what is,
I mean, if we're sending people back out, I think it should be something like 50 to make sure we're, you know, the rest of the community isn't paying for something that
Yeah.
necessarily.
I think if it's 50, I think that's adequate to cover the costs.
All right. Okay, so we've talked about the renewal fee. Sounds like 50 is maybe an okay one. Should we talk about the setbacks? What our thoughts and feelings are in regards to that?
Mayor, may I
Yeah,
add one
absolutely.
thing before we move away from the renewal fee? What should the renewal period be in the license period? Because the renewal
Oh,
fee
yeah.
would have to be once every however long the license period should be.
That's
We'll have to
actually-
reintroduce a license period that is no longer in the.
That's a good thing you bring up, thank you. And
Oh,
I
'cause it's
just,
that before it was just an application fee. Yeah, you're right, so we're kind of changing it now, aren't we?
And so these would both be, the license time period would be in section 932.050C, and the fee would go into 932.050D. I've been keeping a running track of where these modifications need to go if the city adopts, or if the council adopts them as we go. So there's a clear place for them, but we don't currently have a license period.
and I wonder if that's like a space to be reasonable, because I think about, like, maybe that aligning with some of our other licenses. I even think about like rental inspections. We're only sending the fire, and I know it's a very different thing, but we're sending the fire department out every 2 years to inspect. Because not a lot happens in a year. I mean,
So
it
you're
can,
saying,
but
like,
it doesn't. Yeah, I'm wondering if we
2-year?
maybe consider a 2-year, and I think that kind of meets a nice middle of we're still coming out and checking
Well, I think
these.
that the idea is as it ages, just to make
Yes,
sure that the
and that's where I think maybe
maintenance
doing a
is-
2-year license could make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
We have other areas that's demonstrated in our,
Well, I think to make people feel comfortable is that doesn't mean that we aren't gonna come back out there.
right.
I mean, if there's
Yeah.
issues,
Yeah.
we're gonna come
Your
back
neighbor
out
calls
there.
and says,
Yeah.
there's stuff, we're gonna be out there, but
Yeah.
I think that 2-year, then we can not overdo it, but also ensure that things are going well.
So would it be easy if it was like, you know, January to December thing? And
No, I would suggest that we.
that, like it is 2 years from when they apply?
Well,
Or-
it could be 2 years from when they apply, or else we could, I would again suggest that I think it should be
Summer
a
months.
summer month.
Yeah, because we could use like our.
You know, to say it's a
summer team
July
to-
1st to, you know, July 1st and it's a 2-year period.
Yeah,
I mean, because first of all,
Everyone's out traipsing
first of all,
around the
that's
snow.
when people are gonna notice the issues the
Right.
most. Because it's gonna be the hottest, it's gonna be, you know, and it's gonna be when people are outside and they notice certain
well,
things.
and you think about like chicks raising into hens, usually they are chicks in the springtime and they'll be more full
But also
grown.
you could actually, like, if the coop was deteriorating or something like that, you wouldn't necessarily see it if we had a winter with snow.
Yeah,
Where in the summer, you would be able to see that it's not being maintained.
yeah, I really think it should be a July
Okay,
1st timeframe.
all right, yeah,
And I think a 2-year could make sense.
yeah. So
Do you
like,
see any
would you
issues with
say
that
like,
from a staff perspective?
What's that?
Doing a 2-year, is there any?
I think that makes sense. I mean, because it's, again, it's not precluding us from dealing with problem issues, and that coincides with how we deal with other animal licensing.
yeah. So $100, it's 2-year, and then $50
Every 2 years.
for every 2 years
Yeah.
after that.
I think that's fair. It's very fair.
Okay. All right. Christoph, did you have anything more you wanted us to kind of discuss in regards to that? Or,
No, those were the 2 items that I
Okay.
had.
should we pivot to talk about setbacks? What's amended, what it sounds like is being amended is keep the 10-foot, but add language to have it be 20 feet from a principal
Residents.
residence of your neighbors, not yours, but your neighbors.
But again, that's really not worth adding because it is the same thing. If you're 10 foot on each side, if you're each 10 feet, you'd get 20.
It does make sense, though, in areas where we have 5 and 10-foot setbacks on either side. Because we do have some areas where it's 5-foot setback on one side and it's 10 foot on the other.
And even like downtown, because those lots weren't done like uniformly, they're kind of all over. So you can have houses that don't have a setback.
There's some
So it
houses
doesn't
that go
prot-
right up to
so
the
we
property line.
If, you know, we really want to protect from being too close from a house, I think it would make sense to add that language.
Sure.
Because I don't think, if the idea is to keep it away from houses a little bit, then the setbacks alone. So if that's what we're trying to accomplish, that's where I think it makes sense. No, I'm neither here nor there if it actually exists, but if we're gonna do it, I think 20 makes sense to ensure that it's for enough way, but we don't also, that there's still a good number of our lots that would accommodate that.
Okay. Thoughts or feelings from other? I'm fine with that language personally. Okay, so those were kind of the two discussion items that were a little different from what the proposed original ordinance. So at this point, if there's no other discussion, I would entertain a motion.
So I'll make a motion with the addition of the 20-foot from principal address setback and the addition of the 2-year licensure period with a $50 renewal. Did I capture it well enough? Okay. I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilmember Hatfield. I will second that. So, second from Mayor Hubbard. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed?
Nay.
Motion, or ordinance passes. Okay.
I can think just maybe a good quick housekeeping would be, when can residents expect to know more about one? So that nobody's like rushing out to buy chickens right now.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think it's important for us to go out and get connections with the associations out there. So, you know, and it'd be good to give them a little bit of time to have some discussion on it. My initial thought is that it feels like September 1st is a timeframe that, you know, could give people enough time to have that discussion and, you know, be able to get our process in place. If it was just our process to get in place, we could probably do it within the next probably 3-4 weeks. But I think giving the association some time to be able to consider that or discuss it, I think we should, if we're gonna be genuine towards providing them an opportunity to do that, I think we just need to give them enough time to.
So when are you proposing?
What I was suggesting is that we just, you know, set September 1st
Okay.
as a date, that we make it effective. And then that's something that we could communicate out to the associations to say, hey, we're notifying you that this ordinance was put in place. We understand that a lot of associations have covenants against this or have not even addressed it. And we're going to be implementing it on September 1st.
Yep.
And, you know, so it gives you enough time to have a discussion.
Sure.
I don't know, does that seem like fair?
Yeah, I was thinking in my head, like, a lot of them maybe have their annual meetings, you know, in that time frame. So it's probably, yeah. But maybe the annual meetings are different depending on the HOA. So
Yeah,
I'm
and-
not sure.
And if they really feel it's an issue for the association that they want to address, I mean, I think they'll address it
Yeah.
sooner than later. And
Yep.
especially if we give them really sort of a couple months to, you know, July and August to really sort of go through a little bit of process. It at least gives them some chance to have that discussion.
All right. I know you're the only one here, John. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you, I appreciate the discussion.
I want to.
This gentleman has been waiting behind any controversial issues.
Oh, I just want to I want to speak that, you know, I understand, you know, there's a difference of opinion, and hopefully you felt heard and through this whole thing. And when we, you know, when I read through all your emails and I looked at what your suggestions were, you know, you had a lot of really great, valid points. And I want to make sure that you know that, you know, that is definitely a part of this process for me to really evaluate that and measure those and weigh those out. So I don't want you to feel like when you walk out of here that your feelings and thoughts and concerns and the opportunities that, you know, for change, you know, that you put in there, that wasn't anything that wasn't looked into, because it really was.
I appreciate everything, and I know you're looking out for the greatest good, but I do think you made a mistake on the setback. It should be greater.
I understand that,
Yeah.
so,
You don't realize it now, but you would, from neighbors. But thank you.
yeah, thank you, so, well, have a good night. All right, moving right along on the agenda, we have another action item, 8B, a public hearing for Comcast Cable Television franchise renewal and franchise ordinance.
Mayor and council members, this item is coming back to us tonight. It's,
Kevin.
yeah, Kevin gets to give a presentation.
I thought you were just in here to hang out.
No, no.
Well, you know, both.
Yeah. So this has to do with our cable franchise fee. This is something that, franchise ordinance, this is something that we already have in place with cable, but periodically, we have to renew our agreement with the cable franchise. So in our community, we have a cable franchise ordinance or agreement where we have in the past with Comcast. It's called a different corporate name. It's a non-exclusive franchise. We're not allowed to have exclusive franchises for cable, but typically, once a cable company comes into a community, another cable company doesn't. So this gives us the ability to make sure that they're meeting certain requirements. So I'm going to turn it over to Kevin, and he can go over and talk a little bit about the history and what this agreement means.
Yeah, Matt's already taken all my presentations. So
Sorry.
No.
So this will be
Done.
quick.
Yeah, right? That's why it's 8B tonight. Actually, this is a long time coming because I think I've had this on my to-do list since I started with the city. So it's great
Doesn't
to
it feel
finally
so
get to
good?
this point here. It'll be great to get to the next point if we can, but this is a great spot to be in as well. So tonight is really just for a public hearing to take and receive comments from anybody that's looking to comment on the proposed franchise renewal, as Matt mentioned. The corporate name you mentioned before too was AMZAC. So the current franchise we have dates back to 2000. So I think AMZAC became Time Warner, which became Comcast. So you can
is
kind
now
of
Xfinity.
see how long this has been in place. I think the franchise renewal conversations have been on and off since 2013. So we've gotten to the point now where we have reached kind of a consensus on where we want to go with the renewal and how we want to kind of look at the proposed franchise compared to the existing franchise. So kind of, again, more on the history side of things. Currently, how we operate, we have 3 PEG channels. So PEG channels are public, educational, government channels. So those are programmed on Comcast. So anybody in Chaska that has Xfinity cable or Comcast cable gets those 3 channels. Channel 14 is mostly community programming, so, you know, arts consortium events, any sort of sporting events, those kinds of things. So more of the event side of things, community center based programming as well. Channel 15 is more of the governmental side of things, so that's a lot of our council meetings, commission meetings, and then other kind of PSAs as well as we fill in. And then Channel 16 is not currently programmed. It hasn't been since before I was here. That was primarily, I think, the school's channel before, but they had since, or prior to me coming, had left or did not need that channel as well. So kind of the biggest thing we kind of negotiated with Renewal is turning in or exchanging channel 16, which we don't currently use, to broadcast channels 14 and 15 in HD. So right now, our 3 channels are only in SD. So the ability to get that in HD was very important to us. I mean, the quality of the broadcast, the ability to see presentations, slides, video, names, is very important. And as you know, most every TV now is in HD. Would be valuable for us to also be in HD as well. So that was kind of the biggest point of kind of our negotiations. We did also keep our franchise fees the same as far as it's 5% of their gross revenue, which is the same. It's the max that's allowed as well. The PEG fees, we did change that from a subscriber-based cost. So we used to get 40 cents, or we currently get 40 cents per month per subscriber. The new franchise would have that as 1% of Comcast gross annual revenue as well. So again, now you're not relying on subscriber numbers, which is a good thing for us. For PEG fees too, just in case, well, probably most of you don't really go into the weeds on this, which I wouldn't blame you. So PEG fees are all those are set aside for costs related to our broadcasts. So anything that we would use for creating videos, the audio visual in this room, all of the equipment we have in the back to broadcast our meetings out to the Comcast channels, that's what we can use those fees for.
And we get those based on the people that have cable, and
Well,
they're paying it on their bill? And
yes.
and so that money is coming directly to us?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yep. So both of these costs are listed on your bill
yeah.
as a line item on there.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, like a fee or whatever.
Yep.
Okay.
Mhm. So the franchise fee portion really is more so on the management side of right-of-way, and then just generally operating as a cable television provider in the city. The PEG fees is more to provide the city as the local franchising authority the ability to communicate more and better with our residents and utilize that cable station as an opportunity to provide programming and information.
Have you found, like, over the last decade or so, just with like the pivot of people using different providers for television or whatever, has that been adversely affected as far as the amount of funding to provide?
Yes.
Yeah, every year it goes down.
Yep.
Yep. Now, I will, what's sort of interesting is, what I've sort of seen recently in the last few years is that I haven't seen it go down, I've actually seen it stay the same. But in essence,
kinda
that's
level.
going down because we have more people in the community.
Right.
So,
Okay.
so I think we've always sort of just anticipated that we're just never, ever gonna see growth in that in the future, just because there are so many different options, and now we have fiber, coming into neighborhoods. That's another option that's out there. We actually do not have the ability under federal law to be able to impose a franchise on a fiber.
Yeah.
But we can on cable, which is sort of interesting because, I mean.
Fiber's like the new hot
Fiber
thing.
is sort of like the new
Yeah.
cable. And, they're both, the intent of the federal law was to make sure that this communication infrastructure that's put in place is able to be used by the public to be able to educate the public and communicate to the public. Well, the same thing can be said about fiber networks, but
Are there TVs that come through fiber networks, or is it only internet?
so,
Just internet.
it's
So
just internet. So
Consider
they-
like an over-the-top service.
Yeah.
I had no idea, because I have
Yeah,
Comcast
'cause-
internet too, so.
Well, because MetroNet, when they first came into the community, had explored actually doing TV over the internet. And one of the big reasons that they decided not to, and it wasn't just our community, every community that they went to, they're like, well, you'll have to pay a franchise fee.
Oh,
And so then they went to just saying, well, we're gonna provide just internet service, and it doesn't really matter, because people subscribe to internet-based services that they just get using their internet.
Yeah. Right, and so, and there's actually been a bill introduced the last 2 years now on the state level to try to allow franchising authorities to have a franchise on broadband providers. I know obviously last year it didn't pass. I don't think this year it also got through, but it's something that local franchising authorities, so both cities and some cities combine they combine with other cities to create commissions. Like if you go to kind of like Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center, they have CCX Media. So it's a group of cities that have joined together to create a kind of a station, so to speak. So
Is there any competitor to Comcast for TV, or is it, you would have to go to Dish or something like that?
Yeah, it's satellite. is
yeah, you'd have to.
your-
Yeah, I'm sure there are some. I don't.
Well, there's
know.
no competitor for
No, yeah.
cable.
Yeah.
No.
Not here.
Not here.
Something
Yeah.
we can compare the fees to that's exactly
No,
the
because
same.
like MediaCom is like in different markets.
Yeah.
Like, they
MediaCom
kind
is,
Internet.
MediaCom's like Chanhassen
Yeah.
as
It just depends
MediaCom.
on what community you live in.
Yeah.
They have
Now,
that sort of divvied up.
And some communities, and I guess I haven't checked on this in a few years, but like Burnsville at one time, they still might have two. Some cities do have two, it just depends on, as Matt mentioned, who wants to come into the city.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then if they do want to provide cable television, then
Then
they
there's a
need
fee
to
for
kind
them.
of.
So
Yep.
everybody's paying the fees.
Mhm.
Okay.
And a lot of these franchise agreements nowadays are pretty much, everyone's kind of come to terms on the kind of the standard terms. And then there, like I said, there's just a few other things based on each city that are some negotiating points. There's not as many as there once was, because everyone's kind of settled into what these are and how these play out. The other big piece for us was as we go to kind of remote locations or other buildings within the city, being able to broadcast back live events, especially during COVID. Live event broadcasting became very popular, and I don't think that's necessarily gone away. So, whether that's curling events or Chaska Cub games or other things, we wanted to make sure we incorporated the ability to take a broadcast from those locations and then put it onto our channels here. So that's mentioned here in the staff report as well. So that's kind of those are the two big pieces. That's under live origination sites. So we kind of worked with them to have the ability to have a cable modem at certain locations so that we could, because a lot of things now are actually done kind of, over the cloud, so to speak. Then we used to have actually hard physical fiber lines run to locations that we just don't use that way anymore. So anyway, those are kind of the highlights. The one typo I had on here is the franchise term will actually be 10 years, not 15. So that's the only difference. So by my time, I should start working on the next one now. No. Gonna take a month off. No. Anyway, so the motion in front of you, I guess, is to open the public hearing to receive any public comments. No action as far as on the ordinance would happen today. We would come back to you if assuming we don't get any comments that would change how the franchise renewal looks. We would come back at the next meeting, which I believe is the 17th?
21st.
21st. There you go. So, any questions?
Any questions for Kevin?
We're getting there, though.
Yeah.
All right, I will.
This has nothing to do with the franchise, but you had me thinking about, when we post videos to YouTube, does YouTube decide themselves whether or not they're gonna run ads before or after, or whatever?
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
that like that's within theirs and
Yep, that's within their, kind of, I guess, right
algorithm
as
or
a,
whatever?
yeah, as a
we
provider,
don't
yeah.
have, okay.
Because of how our account's set up is we don't monetize our
Yeah,
account,
that's
so,
what,
yeah, so
yeah,
we
so
don't.
I wondered about that. Not that I've seen any, but it just had me thinking.
No, I
about
mean,
all
it
that.
also, a lot of times it depends on how popular your video is.
Yeah.
So once you get to a certain number of views,
Just
then
starts- just kicks in.
they start putting ads there. So, locally yours and others could see those ads.
All right.
Yeah, so striving to hit that mark, but, anything we do
Gotta
produce,
get a viral video out there.
and anything we do produce for YouTube is also something that would go on our cable station. even more long-form type programming,
Sure,
too. So there's some opportunities out there.
like between the two ferns, sort of,
Yes, exactly.
You knew what I was talking about.
Oh, that's a great
over
show. I
here.
love that show, yeah. That shows up on my TikTok feed all the time. A lot of the greatest
I
hits
think
on
we
that
could get a
one.
clever name for a podcast and video cast on YouTube between like the two, like a couple mayors.
Yeah, something, I guess
Between-
we'll have to put our heads together.
Yeah, maybe that's it,
41 no,
between
that
two
doesn't
heads.
sound good.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions? Otherwise, I guess I'll step aside just for public hearing purpose.
Any
Still- I'll
questions?
still be here for questions if you have some after public comment.
Okay,
A lot of
it's gonna
public
be
that
a
wanna
lot of
comment.
public
Public
comment.
comment, yeah.
All right, well,
So,
I need a motion to open a public hearing.
Motion to open public hearing.
All right.
Second.
All right, I got a motion from Councilmember Shevlin and then a second from Councilmember Benish. Do we need to vote on opening a public hearing?
I don't think technically we need actually motion.
Well, it says here, motion to open a public hearing to
Oh,
receive
well,
public
usually we
comments.
I think you can just open the public hearing.
Oh, I thought that was weird. Sorry. I was
I was
like,
just-
I might
I was
have, I may have
thinking
taken
about
some
the same
liberties
thing.
on how I wrote that.
Yeah.
sorry.
I was reading.
It sounded good.
I thought there's something
I
I
was-
knew I didn't know.
I was like, is there something?
No, sometimes there are unique. I was just following along and reading the rules.
I'm glad I can
Trevor's
have
just
that kind of
trying to sound
influence.
Now we've just made our viral moment.
Yes, right there.
All right. Okay, well, now that that's been had, let's open a public hearing at 8:26. I opened a public hearing at 8:26. And seeing that no one's come forward, I will close that
Well, should we check Zoom?
Oh, yeah, okay. Krista, any Zoom? No one is online.
So
Sad.
disappointing.
Okay, well, I can't talk for 30 more seconds to kind of get it to officially be, yeah. I mean, I could try to
Play
talk
the
for
Jeopardy
20
song.
seconds, yeah. But I think what I'll do is I will close this public hearing at 8:27. And that's all we need to do at this point, right?
Yeah,
There's
unless
nothing
you
to vote
guys,
on.
unless you guys have any other comments that you want us to include in.
Does anybody have any more comments or questions for Kevin?
Or any other motions you want me to ask for?
I know, I was just reading the bottom.
No,
was like, oh,
hey,
I
that's
gotta
on,
make a
that's
motion
on
to
me.
open
I'm the
this.
one that wrote it, so.
So, it's all good. That was fun. All right, well, then, that feels kind of
You'll
weak.
see
I
it-
don't know.
You'll see it back at the July 21st
All
meeting.
right, cool. Moving on the agenda. Bills, 9A. Does anybody have a question on a bill?
I had
All right,
a question, but I Googled it, so then I found out what it was, so.
Okay.
No questions.
So I'm not hearing a lot of clamor for questions, so I'll entertain a motion to pay the bills.
Motion to pay the bills.
All right.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Councilmember Shevlin and a second from Councilmember Grah. Would you be so kind to do a roll call, please?
Councilmember Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilmember Benish.
Yes.
Councilmember Shevlin.
Yes.
Councilmember Grah.
Aye.
Mayor Hubbard.
Aye. All right. That moves us along to other business. Let's start with Councilmember Benish. I feel like I never start with you.
That's okay. I don't really have anything, actually.
Darn. Okay. Well, moving along, let's do Councilmember Shevlin then.
Honestly, don't have anything either.
Okay, I'm on a roll. Let's maybe go to Councilmember Hatfield then.
Sure, I have things.
Okay.
Just a few events coming up. Well, and I guess to comment, I saw pictures from the Pride event. I didn't get to make it to this year.
Oh, yeah.
Now that they're on Saturdays, that's when weddings happen. When it's on a Sunday, it was different, but it's weddings on Saturdays. But the pictures looked great and looked like great turnout, even though it was disgustingly humid and hot that day. But great job to the Human Rights Commission for putting that on. And then just a few things coming up. Riverview Terrace is celebrating 50 years, so I just want to congratulate them on that. They're a great partner in our community. They create a great space for people to live, and they just do a great job. And so July 2nd from 4 to 7, they're having an event with food trucks and llamas and bounce houses to celebrate. And they did say it's open to the public, so that is on Wednesday. So congratulations and excited for that event. And then some other things coming up, Fire and Ice, July 11th and 12th. The month of July here, you can really have a lot of fun. So July 11th and 12th is Fire and Ice, and then River City Days is the last weekend in July. So 4th of July fireworks on Friday, everyone be safe. Those will be going off at Lake Grace, Lake McKnight, McKnight Lake.
McKnight Park.
They're gonna go off somewhere.
Yep.
And then we always have great fireworks for Fire and Ice. So
Two nights of those.
2 nights of those, so
Yep.
you can really get your fill of fireworks in. Be
Yeah.
respectful to your neighbors. Don't be jerks. Maybe this year we won't see any comments on Facebook about
Right.
I doubt it, but, other than that, I think, one other thing, congratulations to, our neighboring community's mayor, Courtney Johnson, was elected as first vice president for the League of Minnesota Cities, which is great. It's nice for the league to have representation from smaller communities in our area, and I know that, while Courtney is the mayor of another community, she is always, a great advocate for her neighbors as well, so congratulations to Courtney.
Absolutely. Well deserved.
Yes.
And earned.
Who is she the mayor
She's
of? I don't know.
amazing. Huh?
Who is she the mayor of? I don't know.
Carver.
Carver.
Good for her.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
absolutely. Is that,
That's
that's
it.
it? Okay, Councilmember Groff, sorry. Well, I got hung up there.
Two things, just a real quick question. I know, I think we maybe all saw an email. I'm not sure if we all get emails or not sometimes. I know there's a conversation about the bike path and particularly the evergreens that are very brown on that. And I thought you answered it very well in the email, but I think it's a lot of good conversation because it's a very visible road. So I'm just giving you the opportunity to kind of talk about that project, talk about a lot of brown evergreens, and people are maybe asking like, hey, that doesn't look the greatest anymore. What's the story?
Well, that's a new variety of pine tree.
Might be,
Yeah.
Might be.
But no, so the bike trail going through did recently get completed. In fact, when I was coming back from lunch today, I saw somebody looked like they were doing a regional ride, which I thought was pretty cool to see somebody using that. But so that was a county project. They were the ones that led that, and as part of that contract, they have landscaping as part of it. Just like our projects, we have trees that don't survive, and we have warranty periods that exist for the trees on there. So the county is aware of the trees that have not survived through that process, and then just like us, they go out, they don't get charged for them. They're part of the warranty process for the contractor. The trees have to last at least a certain amount of time. Like our trees through downtown, I think, are a 2-year warranty that we have on there. But it can be anywhere from a year to 2 years they have in that. But they will be replaced when they go back and do sort of the punch list items there.
Second question was just a question that came to mind with all the rain. Where are we at with like river levels and
These are all the things that I
flood
have on my
levels
list.
and?
We should be pretty good. Yeah, I drove back from South Dakota yesterday, and so we saw the Minnesota River in a number of places, and it's high. But it hasn't gone over its banks in any of the areas, and the weather forecast is looking pretty decent going out the next few days. It's going to remain high, but we do not anticipate that it's going to come up and be like last year's, unless next week we get some monsoon that comes through.
Sure.
We're not expecting at this point that it's going to reach Athletic Park.
And then lastly, I said I had two, but I just thought of a third one. Just a shout out to all the agencies and groups and Facebook posts and with the weather events last Saturday. Technically, it was probably Sunday morning, I guess, with the tornadoes in Carver County.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Well, you really threw
everyone-
me off with Saturday. I was like, what happened
Well, yeah,
Saturday?
it technically was Sunday. It was like 12:30. I specifically know because I was up before what happened.
Yeah, boy, that.
But it just is, anywhere you look, you could find kind of what was going on and information, and the siren went, and it's just interesting because I had this conversation with my kids. One was awake and one I had to wake up to go to the basement. But that was the question, is because they knew there was some bad weather coming, like, well, how do we, will we hear the siren? And it's like, it's pretty close, it's right there. And so you will hear it. But then we talked about, you know, the push notifications that go out on phones now, and it's just, you know, people have NOAA weather radios, and then, you know, you went to Facebook and the Chaska Police and the fire and the car, you know, everyone was keeping people updated in hopes everyone is paying attention and keeps people safe, because it is rare, truthfully, for storms of that nature to go through at that time of night.
Yeah.
And that's just what you always kind of worry about, because you do kind of like, well, yeah, it's a siren right there, but what if I'm in a deep sleep, right?
Or if all three of your kids are sleeping and you choose to ignore it.
Yeah, all those things, right? So I just think it was just good, because again, it's easy to be aware in the loop of what's going on when it's in the day or that prime 3 to 7 period. But and thankfully, I think some damage, but I didn't hear any, you know, major injuries or anything like that, which is good, because you do worry like those middle of the night storms, which are rare.
Yeah, you can't see them coming.
You can't see them come in and everything like that too. So just a shout out for all those people who are out there keeping us safe and keeping us in the know when the weather strikes at all times of day, so.
It is kind of nice. We have, you know, the National Weather Service located in Chanhassen, and last year about this time, I took a tour. They were so great. My son gets so anxious over severe weather. So one of the things that I did as mom was like, maybe if we learn about it more, then it can take some of that anxiety away. And so I reached out to them, and they were so gracious to give us a tour. We actually got to go out and watch them launch the weather balloon at 6 o'clock. And that's actually something that they do worldwide at the same time.
Oh,
So
cool.
everybody, you know, launches it, and it goes away, and it doesn't come back. It's gone. But, you know, I got to learn that process. But part of it was learning also the radar software that they use, and kind of, he was showing us, you know, what they do when they can see it in the layers, and they can do all that, and then they can pull and trigger the warnings and sound the sirens and all that stuff. So it's really kind of neat. But it's also one of those things where they lean on each other, because I think, you know, with the way that their radar is like, it's like a cone, you know, where they can't really see over the top of themselves. So then you have your other National Weather Services that are looking at that to make sure that we're still all safe out down here too, right next to them, so, but, yeah.
Sorry, one more just popped in.
No, you're fine,
Weather related, have we heard anything from Carver County in regards to localized alarms? You know, city, and what I mean, like when there's a tornado warning in any part of the county, it alarms the entire county. And like Hennepin now has gone to localized, and so like they can section off areas, and it's a county decision. Have we heard any talk or discussion about what Carver County's thinking when it comes to localized?
No, I mean, we can ask the question. I mean, they have taken a more general approach in Carver County. I personally think it's a little problematic because, I mean,
They move.
because you can have something out in Watertown, let's say, and you hear, well, and this happened, what was it, a week and a half ago? There was sirens that went off, and it was stuff that was more up towards the, you know, north of Lake Oconee, Watertown area. You don't want to get to a point where people don't pay attention to those things because of that. But I can ask the question. In the
Yeah, just
past,
curious. I think
it
there's
is
only-
their decision to do that.
I think
to
there's
do
only
that.
2 counties so far in the state that have gone to localized.
And Hennepin's so big, that makes sense.
Hennepin's one of them.
Yeah.
I forget what the other one is. And then it's just, you have to reprogram your NOAA weather radio and all that
Yeah.
type of thing. So I was just curious, because you're right, it's right, it is a little bit interesting when it's not really near you perspectively, so, okay.
Okay.
And now I promise you I'm done.
That's okay. Elise? All right, Krista? No, Matt?
You guys should have on your desk here invitations to the Minnesota Municipal Power
Yeah, what, do
Agencies.
you want them back?
Yep, you
Or
can give them to
yes?
me and we can get
Okay.
them in, or you can take them home and give some thought to whether you're able to attend. But if you are able to attend, this is our annual meeting. It's over at Canterbury this year. We try to rotate it amongst the member communities. It's a really good opportunity to learn about the agency and what we're doing from the agency's perspective to meet sort of local goals. You learn about where your electricity is being generated, how we deal with, you know, what our goals are for pricing, what we are doing for renewables, all those different types of things. So it's definitely a worthwhile thing to go to if you haven't been before. We'll make sure to notice it so that everybody can go. And, yeah, you can either give it to me or send it back in if you want to go, and we'll get it in.
Okay, thanks. Awesome. All right, some of the stuff was mentioned. I did attend the Pride picnic, and it was about as hot as you would imagine it was gonna be. But I will say, considering how hot it was really well attended. I was really surprised at the amount of folks that came out, and actually were out for a long duration, because I don't know, I was there for almost the whole thing. But and then they had a couple of food vendors, and they had some arts and crafts. There were some other community organizations, like Public Health was out there, and I know some local congregations were out there. And so it was a nice community gathering. There was melted ice cream. They called it ice cream soup. But yeah, lots of fun to be had out there. I think I'm gonna put this on record that next year they should talk about maybe having a pop-up splash pad, because I think that would be good, because it's been the second year, I think it's been really, really hot. And that might be a really fun thing. So anyways, thank you to our Human Rights Commission and Park and Recs and all the other city staff for making that happen and having it be such a great event. Last week, we also hosted was it last week? No, it was the week before. Hosted the Met Council. They came on like kind of a traveling road show. We were able to kind of host a lot of the district's representatives on the Met Council. So a lot of people that don't live in our area were able to come down and really see Chaska and really see, Fireman's Park, and see that vision, of a project that, at the time was something that was, kind of scary and kind of controversial, of taking a park and then kind of making it something different, and kind of the success of that. But our former mayor, Mr. Wind Shuttle here, spoke to that. And then there were some other panelists like Carver Mayor Courtney Johnson, and some business owners in Shakopee and the Dakota Compost, and myself included. So it was a great quick conversation, but it was really nice to see. And that also led into an invitation to go to the Dakota Prairie Compost site. They had a grand opening last week, so I went and attended, and I got to see that facility and kind of what their plans are when they get the food machinery in there, and what they're doing right now, with composting, the aeration of stuff. And I'll say, when you get up close to it, there's definitely smells, but when you're not so far away, it's actually not bad. So it's kind of surprising, but kind of see the technique that normally it takes. I don't know how long it normally takes. I think it was normally 90 days, but it's only takes 26 days, because they have these bays, and they use air, and they do all this stuff to kind of aerate it so that it breaks down faster. So really interesting. And then the police picnic was canceled due to weather, unfortunately, so that was kind of a bummer. River City Days, question, we're having a city booth, but are we doing the parade? Are we participating in the parade again? Is that something that?
Yeah, we typically, council members typically have. We haven't heard anything as far as registration or anything like that for the parade.
Not for the parade.
Okay, I see the route being advertised, but I didn't know, and I was like, I don't know what our plans are, so I figured I'd ask. And then we have, Fire and Ice, you talked about the dates, the 11th and 12th, awesome food, fun, music, fireworks. There's also the dunk tank, which I don't know if anybody else had been emailed to sign up for that.
Gone, unfortunately.
So,
Well, I may be there.
yes.
If you've never done it, it's really cold.
Yeah. And so.
My hardest thing I remember last year was my height. And so if I just fell off it, that was kind of boring, right?
Not for you.
For them. And I play the game. So I went down. My legs were so sore. I felt like I did squats the whole time, right? Because I had to do.
Well, then you got to climb the ladder and get yourself back up on the board
oh my
again.
gosh, I am sore from sitting on the dunk tank. But yeah,
I was.
I'm hoping that state baseball schedule lines up that I can participate, but that is a
Okay.
state baseball tournament.
Yeah, I know.
The kids are merciless too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
My kids were part of the
Christoph, you
worst.
participated in it as well. Yeah. I know I had a bruise on my tailbone that lasted for weeks after that. From
I mean, who
sitting
doesn't
on
want
that.
to dunk a lawyer?
But sadly, I was like, I felt like, oh, I should sign up for this again. So I did sign up for it. So if you have grievances with me, you can show up from 12:30 to 1 o'clock and you can throw balls at the, yeah, Matt's like planning it out
All right.
already.
How many
So,
strikes do I get?
yes. I try to go early, so, because I heard the longer that water is and the more suspicious it is.
Ew.
But that is happening, so, 4th of July, is coming up Friday. Be careful, have good fun, be safe with fireworks, be safe out and about. We have, and just just a shout out to our Chaska Cubs, man, they're having a great season so far. Topped a lot of lists or in the top 10, so great job. Been able to partially attend mini games. I've had to like leave early, but yeah, it's been a great event. So, and then we have our next meeting for council is on July 21st, but we do have an EDA meeting following this one. So that's all I have. Unless anybody has anything else, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, a motion from Councilmember Shevlin.
Second.
Second from Councilmember Hatfield. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. All right.
President Hubbard.
Here. All right. Next is to adopt the agenda. Does anybody have any additions or correction to the agenda? Otherwise, I entertain a motion to adopt it.
Motion to adopt agenda.
Okay, a motion by Councilmember Hatfield,
Second.
or sorry, Commissioner Hatfield, and a second from Commissioner Benish. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, agenda is adopted. Moving on along is approval of the previous meeting minutes. These meeting minutes are back from February 24th, 2025. Does anybody have any additions or corrections for the meeting minutes?
I had to think real hard to remember it all, but motion to approve meeting minutes.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Hatfield,
Second.
and a second from Commissioner Benish. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved. And then that moves us to our discussion items. We have none, so that moves us to other business, which is 6A. Consent of the Chaska Economic Development Authority to assignment of tax increment financing development agreement for Chaska Place, parentheses, North Meadows Apartments.
All right, Mr. President and Commission members, so the item in front of you tonight is with what started out as being called North Meadows Apartments, then became Chaska Place, which is just adjacent to our public safety facility, just to the west of that, and has 127 units that have been around since 2002. When North Meadows was first constructed, there was a TIF district that was put in place to help make units, a certain number of units within there more affordable. There was a note, it was basically a pay-as-you-go note where they got rebated back to them for a certain number of years to take care of paying off that note. That note has been fulfilled, but we still have additional years that the TIF district can remain open, that we can actually pool those dollars and then be able to use it towards other affordable housing projects within the community. Because of that, if we're keeping it open, they are currently going through the process of selling to another entity, which is Granite Hybrid Fund 2 LLC. And to do that, we have to actually, we basically have to approve the execution of an assignment of that development agreement that we had with them, a subordination agreement, and an estoppel, which is basically everything that keeps our ability to keep that TIF district running for the remainder of the time, and make it that those conditions run with the next owner of the property. So we have done this in the past because originally it was built by Klinglet's Development Corporation, and then it was sold to SB Chaska Partners, and we did the same type of action with that back in 2009. And now we're being asked again to do it this year. So it's pretty simple, sort of belt and suspenders sort of action, but staff is recommending authorizing the president and the executive director to execute these closing documents for this project. And certainly can answer any questions.
All right, does anybody have any questions for Matt? I mean, it seems pretty cut and dry.
Yeah.
So, I don't have any questions, but,
No questions.
Nope.
all right. Well, I would entertain a motion here to authorize us to execute the closing agreements.
Motion to execute.
Okay. All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Benish,
Second?
and a second from Commissioner Shetland. Any other discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Motion carries. And that leads us to, well, was that in like the wrong category?
Yes.
Okay.
I was thinking that, but I was like, what?
Yeah.
I
Should have been
you know,
discussion
I
items.
feel like Ron Burgundy from Anchorman.
Yeah.
Like you just put something in front of me and I'm just gonna
I'll
read
just
it
read it.
tonight, like blindly, apparently. No thought. Yeah, put a question mark after that, like, am I? Well, okay, well, since we're still in new other business, does anybody have any other business in the EDA capacity here? Okay. No KFC updates? No.
Oh, geez.
Okay.
They might want to come back now with, just kidding.
All right.
See what you did there.
Thank you.
Okay, well, if that's the case, then I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
No.
Oh,
Oh, I'll make a motion to
Sorry.
adjourn, fine.
Second.
Okay, so a motion from Mayor Hubbard and second from Commissioner or President Hubbard, second from Commissioner Graw. It's really hard for my mind tonight. All those in favor, say aye.
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 We are adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.